Hey, it's Jordan. Delighted to be joined by Braxton Brewington, your spokesperson for the Debt Collective, which was one of the many groups behind a major protest right in front of the Department of Education this week. And you had folks there with giant pens for President Biden to pick up the pen and just cancel the debt. He went the mealy-mouthed way again, extending the freeze on student loan repayment until August. I believe this is like the fifth or sixth extension. What is your reaction to this extension? But also, obviously, that's not enough, and you guys are calling for full-on canceling the debt. And in this case, we're threatening a strike if the pause wasn't extended again.
It is no surprise that President Biden extended the pause because we forced him. We went to DC and took action and showed that debtors have power. Also, the administrative burden on simply turning student debt payments back on makes it quite nearly impossible. So there's a lot of elements working in our favor here. This is a moment where we are definitely pushing way beyond an extension to the pause, right? The pause was a Trump era policy that actually didn't include everyone who has student loans. So there's folks with private student debt, people who have FFEL loans who actually aren't included in the loan. So who actually aren't included in this pause. So, we're grateful for an extension to the pause. We know millions of borrowers who are now able to save billions of dollars in their pockets and use that towards putting food on the table and paying for other necessary expenses. But it's simply not enough. And we're not going to see the economic and financial and political results that we need with an extension to the pause. We've got to cancel all of it. So we're still pushing for that. But yeah, this extension for several more months is a good thing. And it's worth reminding folks that just a year ago, the Biden administration was saying final in all caps that we would never extend the pause again. And so this is proof not just that Joe Biden is movable, but that when debtors get organized, we can use our power collectively to make change. So that's what happened.
And call me a cynical Susie here, but it seems that they are extending it closer and closer to the midterms. I would venture to guess they'll probably extend it again past the midterms. I agree. It's a good thing for people who were about to have, hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of additional dollars owed per month. But to me, they're not stupid in the White House. I'm sure they see polls that it's incredibly popular to cancel the debt, and they need young people to come out in midterms. You can't get in their heads, but what the Debt Collective, what is the feedback you've gotten from the administration or just in general on the reasons that they're hesitating to cancel it?
Well, we're still talking about Joe Biden. We're just talking about someone who has for decades sided with creditors and sided with big banks and not working class people. And so the reason that we've got these 5, 6, however many extensions we have now is not because of Joe Biden showing the goodness of his own heart and or even, there's several popular proposals that have sweeping support, even more support than student debt cancellation that the Biden administration hasn't taken action on. So there's more than that, there's more there at play. I think there's just a true ideological struggle with President Biden and his administration in canceling debt for the 99%, right? Not the 1%. We do that all the time, and the Biden administration has done that. The 1% walks away from their debts all of the time. We've forgiven PPP loans, right? Those things happen sort of in an instant. When it comes to regular working people, Black and brown Americans, people who live paycheck to paycheck, that's when things sort of become difficult. So I really think there's an ideological struggle because what people are going to say is, which is what we're pushing for, what people are going to say is, if you can cancel student debt, then why can't you cancel all student debt? Why can't you cancel medical debt? Well, why am I paying rent? Why am I paying for my own incarceration? This is going to have this sort of snowball effect that I think the Biden administration very well and most neoliberal, corporate aligned Democrats and Republicans are anticipating. And so I think that's what the ideological struggle is, and as well as actually a commitment to the commodification of higher education. And so canceling student debt reneges on that sort of commitment and actually makes real the promise that higher education is supposed to be a right, not a privilege. I think those are the things that are sort of ideologically holding us up right now for the Susan Rices, the Joe Bidens of the world, who are really committed to those very morally bankrupt ideologies.
And I think you hit on something I would add in. It's not so much Biden's ideology as it is the donors, because we live in the United Corporations of America. I think with this, yeah, on the surface, yeah, we could cancel it. We got $800 billion for the military. Sure, we can get rid of this. But I think the donors, particularly Wall Street banks, who heavily are invested in student loans, I think the universities that donate to Democrats and Republicans, they are afraid to open up this spigot. Because like you said, if we could do this big thing, well, why then these folks are going to be moving their attention to free public college. We don't want that. Then these people might be shifting. Wait a minute. I mean, if we could do this, why not Medicare for all? I mean, can you kind of talk about that psychology? I don't think it's just Biden still living in the 1980s. He was called the senator from MBNA. I also think it's all the special interests corrupting our government.
You're absolutely right. One of the first things that we sort of checked internally yesterday, when there was reporting that we were expecting an extension to the pause, was the stock market. And SoFi stock was plummeting and still is. SoFi, a major financial lender who profits off of people's pain. Specifically, they profit off of student debt and people who are trying to make those payments back. So it in a lot of ways, it really is a numbers game. There are not just President Biden, but people who are corporately aligned, corporate backed, and they are getting donations and funding from and being lobbied by places like SoFi and other financial institutions that have a very, very unfair share and say in what happens in the financial well-being of working class people. So you're absolutely right. That's a huge part of it.
Right. And can you also talk about, I mean, obviously it's a good thing for the loan repayment, but this kind of dangling over people, students, and it's not all young people, a lot of older people with student loans, this constant uncertainty about when they're going to have to restart payment. That's got to be incredibly anxiety inducing when you're already dealing with rent increases, food increases, gas increases. Can you kind of talk about people the debt collective have spoken to? They might be happy with the extension, but I'm assuming they're not pleased with the uncertainty.
No, the uncertainty is real, and it's toying with people's futures and the financial decisions that they can make on literally whether to have children, whether to get married, whether they're going to be able to purchase a home or not. Folks reach out to us who are considering incredibly drastic measures like selling their entire home to be able to pay back their student debt should payments resume. People who are considering hurting themselves or taking their own lives, right? These are various very serious matters. This is life and death for millions of people. And so even waiting, less than a month to sort of extend the pause is quite dangerous. And extending it, just for a few months really just puts people in this sort of hole again, where they're not sure whether they're going to be able to afford their rent or put gas in their car over the next couple of months. So, we know that people are saving money, billions of dollars, but the uncertainty is still a huge problem. And so that's why we still have this threat of debt striking should payments resume for any reason in August, because so many people say, I need to find a way to be able to get to $0 a month in a safe way that I can, so that I can be able to afford, milk for my child or put gas in my car. So
right.
It's pretty absurd.
And also, this notion, Well, we did this because we were in an emergency with COVID, which is accurate. COVID is still a problem, despite the media declaring it over. But, to me, they're pushing this notion that the economy is booming and, it's a historic economic recovery. I mean, I'm talking to people for my economic Hunger Games series. I don't know who it's booming for, but not working people. So these same folks that have the student loan debt, it's not like, okay, the dark cloud of student loan debt being temporarily lifted. Now they have all the money in the world and could enjoy themselves. Can you kind of talk about these are still paycheck to paycheck people without the student loan burden?
COVID-19 has exacerbated the inequities that were already existing: racism, misogyny, other inequities that were in our workplaces. So, as much as there's talk about things quite getting better, they're really not. But the point is that student debt was a crisis before the pandemic. So even if the economy were to return or is getting close towards returning to the way that things were before 2020, that's actually not a goal worth striving for. That's actually a pretty dangerous goal to be heading towards, which was actually a one point, then $6 or $7 trillion student debt crisis, where the second highest household debt type in the country after mortgages was student loan debt. And people were defaulting, losing their jobs, losing their driver's license, having their social security check garnished. So striving for this sort of pre-pandemic era of where the economy was is really a poor goal, which is why we're actually quite frustrated with the Biden administration's insinuation that they're extending the pause because of COVID, right? That's definitely part of it. But what they should actually be doing is canceling student debt. And that's something that should have happened before 2020, right? We've been pushing for this for a decade. We marched on 1T Day when student debt hit $1 trillion back in 2012. So we don't actually need to, hold this, the student debt crisis or the issue as a sort of COVID era policy. This is just a broad systemic failure of higher education and failing to fund higher education for the past 4 or 5 decades.
Right. And lastly, not that you've taken a survey, but I assume if Biden would cancel the student loan debt, a lot of these people that were out at the protest and a lot of young people might be more inclined to come out and vote for Democrats in November. Am I wrong?
You're not wrong. And there is a survey. Color of Change showed 40% of Black voters would consider sitting out the next election if there was no action on student loan debt. We know young voters, their satisfaction with President Biden is rapidly declining, in part because of inaction on student loan debt. Older voters actually support student debt cancellation. People who do not have student debt or never went to college are now, a majority of those folks are supporting student debt cancellation. So it's a very broad coalition. And, again, unfortunately, the president doesn't typically act on things just because they're popular, or else we would have a $15 minimum wage. We would have broad sweeping clemency, marijuana legalization, student debt cancellation. So we've got to keep pushing on this issue and bring other folks into this fight that are maybe not necessarily the people that are leading on this issue, like people who are in the anti-war movement, teachers and nurses, librarians and social workers, people who are working class, and people who are doctors and lawyers. All of these voices are incredibly important. And so I think that's what this action was about, to bring those voices into the fold and just to continue to push on the Biden administration to say, not only is this something that would be politically reprehensible to not take action on student loan debt, but you're really gonna hurt folks economically.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Braxton Brewington, spokesperson for the Debt Collective. Let's stay in touch.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for watching, and make sure to tune in to Status Coup's daily live stream Monday through Thursday at 5 o'clock Eastern Time and Fridays at 4 o'clock Eastern Time.